Okay, Katrina. So now we'll have a look at the putting a flashcard together. And the point of this is to practice being in your kind of wise self, your healthy adult voice, and connecting with that message of your healthy self at times that you really need it. And especially when you're triggered, when that old defectiveness schema is triggered, you're feeling unlovable, you're feeling overwhelmed, then it can be really hard to kind of find that voice, to access that voice. So this flashcard exercise is about us making flashcards, different flashcards for different situations, to prepare you for those situations and to give you a bit more, I guess, access to that healthy voice in that situation, to remind yourself of kind of what's real and not be overtaken by the schema message, which can just be like a runaway train in those times. So it's about learning really to fight back against that schema voice when it's activated, to kind of shut it down. I'm not going along with that anymore. I'm not having that anymore. And so we're bringing in the evidence to remind yourself at those times. So can you think of a situation that happens commonly to trigger that feeling that you're unlovable? What's a typical trigger for you?
One that came up this week, which comes up frequently, was I was trying on my favorite jeans and they didn't fit me anymore. And so, yeah, I felt like I'd gained weight and felt very frustrated at myself. Yeah, lots of feelings coming up, really. Frustration, felt like I was greedy, felt unlovable, never going to get a boyfriend.
Okay. So at this moment, I'm feeling frustrated, greedy, unlovable because because my clothes are tight, and
I gained weight.
And you have gained weight, or it feels like you've gained weight?
Well, I'm trying not to get on the scales, but it feels like I have if my clothes aren't fitting me.
So, okay. So that your clothes are tight and it feels like you've gained weight. Yeah. And when we think about this, the schemas we're talking about, this is this kind of unlovable schema, isn't it? With what we call the defectiveness schema, or the kind of defectiveness or unlovable schema. So it's the message that you're flawed, there's something wrong with you, etc. And where did you learn this? When you think back to the previous exercises where we've talked about this schema, what is it that you learned? How did you learn to think this way about yourself?
Well, I guess I've never, like I said, I've never had a boyfriend, and I think the anorexia was a way of kind of coping with lots of difficult things in my past. I don't really know where I learned it. There were lots. Is this from when we were talking about what happened when I was younger in my childhood?
Yeah. So in a sense, I guess what we're talking about here is what you learned way back when you were a little kid and you were trying to make sense. You were only a little child and you could only look at the world and what was going on around you from the perspective of being a little child. And I think something that you'd mentioned to me was there was a lot of shouting, a lot of criticism, grumpiness.
Yeah, and yeah, Dad shouted all the time. Mum was always stressed when she was around me. I only had 2 friends. And I was quite different from my sisters.
Yeah. was my fault. I assumed that because I was different from my sisters and noisy, that this made me less lovable.
Yeah, and I always felt like I was in the way or I was an inconvenience.
Right. So I was different from my sisters. That this, because I was different from my sisters, this made me less lovable, and I always felt like, and my parents, my dad in particular, made me feel like my energy and chattiness was an imposition, and I was in the way.
Yeah, and took up too much space.
Okay. So it's kind of more that his tolerance for having children around doing the things that children do was very low. And I assumed it was my fault. And he made me feel it was my fault. Would you say?
Yeah.
Okay. So even though I believe in this situation, when you're being triggered, you gained weight, or you feel like you've gained weight, you're looking you're trying on your clothes and it feels like you've gained weight. What is it in that moment that you believe?
That I'm a failure, that I will never be loved by anyone else, and that what always comes to mind is see you couldn't do it, you failed again.
Okay. Yeah,
and
so there's those two parts there, really, aren't there? Two schemas, kind of a failure schema and a defectiveness schema, there together. This sense that I'm a failure, and that means that other people won't want to be around me. Other people, I'll never have people in my life that care about me, something like that. Or is that what you're?
Yeah, definitely. No one's gonna want to get close to me because I feel disgusted at myself.
And does it feel like you're disgusting? Does it feel like, do you feel like you're disgusting in that moment? Is that?
Yeah, I'm disgusting. How could I have been such a pig?
Okay, so in that moment, there's that schema voice. See how strong it is in that moment. I'm a disgusting pig. You're a disgusting pig. It comes back to that exercise previously, doesn't it, where that side gets really strong and critical, mean even. So even though in that moment, I believe I'm a failure, I believe I'm unlovable, and that I'll never have people in my life who want to be close to me because I'm a disgusting pig. Okay. Unlovable. The reality. So here we come to the kind of looking beyond the schema voice, and there's that schema message that just kind of goes on and doesn't really care about the evidence, and just kind of gets this gratuitous pleasure out of criticizing you and putting you down. The reality from the exercise we did previously, what did you unpick in the previous exercise about what was really going on, and what's is it that nobody wants to have you in their life? Is it that nobody the other people see you that way, that you're unlovable and a disgusting pig? What's the evidence there in terms of people wanting to spend time with you?
Yeah, this one is always the hard bit. So yeah, I guess we've spoken about my nephew wanting to spend time with me. He always kind of seeks me out, but I think the reality is that it's not linked to me being lovable just because I can't fit in my clothes anymore. Doesn't mean that I'm unlovable.
The tightness of my clothes isn't linked to my inherent lovability.
Yeah, maybe it's more linked to the fact that I have been to some very nice restaurants recently and maybe eaten a bit more than usual, but I had a nice time while I was eating.
And I guess, you learned in the past, didn't you, that losing weight was kind of trying to take up less space in the world. But does that mean that, if you take up more space in the world, that you're here in the world, that you automatically take up, that you're automatically unlovable, that in a sense your anorexia was a way of solving that old pattern of feeling that you're unlovable? But if you're not solving that pattern, anymore, does that make you unlovable? Or does it just mean that, that's not inherently true, that you're unlovable?
Yeah, I think it's not inherently true that I'm unlovable. And I definitely thought that in the past, but through doing these exercises, I'm starting to see that there's always more than one way of kind of looking at it. And I think I always jump to the negatives first.
Yeah.
And always assume it means something bad, but it was just my way of coping and trying to be less of a burden.
Yeah. The less of a burden.
Yeah.
So being a normal size and taking up space in the world is normal and not is normal. And do you feel like other people see you as less lovable when depending on your body size? Or, what messages have you had from other people, like friends and so forth?
No, I think I actually had a friend who said that I looked more healthy. And I think a friend heard me saying something like this to myself and was quite shocked, I think, that I spoke to that myself in that way.
Yeah. And so did you get the impression that was something she wanted? She wanted you to be healthy, that she wanted that was a good thing from her perspective?
Yeah. And I think at first I thought she was just, I don't know. I didn't know if I believed that she was trying to say something nice for me, but I think it was genuine. But my mind automatically thought she just wants me to get fatter so that she can be thinner than me and feel good about herself.
Yeah. And that comes back to what we talked about in the previous exercise, doesn't it, about the schema discounting information, that even when there's evidence there that you're lovable, that your schema chucks it out the window, that, well, that's not the case, she's just competing with you. And I think when you're in that place of your schema telling you that you're unlovable, telling you that there's something wrong with you, then it's very easy to feel like you need to compete, to feel like I'm not good enough and I'm in competition with everyone around me, that we're all trying to get you know, there's only enough lovability to go around, and we're all got to compete over that. Yeah, that's a kind of nature of this schema, isn't it, really, to make you feel like you're never quite lovable enough. So others tell me they want me to be healthy, to take up space in their lives, and that that taking up more space doesn't make you less lovable, or quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say people want to spend more time or less time with you when you're approaching a normal weight?
I guess when I'm approaching a normal weight, it normally means that the anorexia has perhaps taken less of a grasp over my whole life. So I might be more likely to go for dinner with friends, and I might be more, more flexible and less rigid, and so have more time for friends. So I think because of those things, yes, they probably want to hang out with me more. I think in the past I have had compliments when I have lost weight at the beginning of the anorexia, before it got really bad and my weight got really low. So that's really hard to kind of forget about.
And I guess that's separating out there, isn't it? Approval seeking, where yes, there are people who are, I guess, always going to give you approval based on kind of competition and cultural messages and so forth, based on, this idea that it's good to be thin, and that's the be all and end all, and kind of based on your external self, and not really caring about who you are as a person. So there are always going to be people who judge you from the outside, or who approve of you from the outside. But I guess what we're talking about here when we're talking about lovability is about something more real, something more inherent, something more deep, something about your real self, rather than something that's just skin deep here. And I guess we're talking about real friendships, real relationships, people who can see the real you, relationships that are going to last into the future, rather than somebody just paying you a compliment in the here and now. And I guess, so when you say here, when I'm less tied up with the anorexia, I'm more myself, I'm more flexible, more open, and others want to
hang out with me more.
Yeah. Okay. So your nephew wants to spend time with you. What other evidence, or what other people are kind of giving you that message?
Friends, I think, kind of keep in contact with me more.
So can you remind me their names? Maria, and who was the other? Jessica. And you said they want to spend time with you?
I guess I've noticed that they suggest meeting up more.
Yeah. And any other evidence there? People find you lovable when you're, that's not kind of hanging on your body shape and size, or that's not hanging on you being thick, on being the thinnest that you can be.
My dog, my cats, the family dog, and my cats, they're always around.
Yeah.
And I know when you say it makes sense. Like, it sounds ridiculous that I wouldn't want to hang out with a friend if they put on weight, but when it's me, I find that hard.
Yeah. When you think about your family, and that the kind of grumpiness factor and the shouty factor in your family, does it make any difference what size or shape you are as to how shouty or grumpy the family, your mum and dad, can be?
Not really, although maybe I'm more shouty back when I'm not eating properly, because my
Mm.
tolerance is lower, so that probably makes it worse.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But in fact, even though that's become your way, your anorexia and being thin has become your way of trying to be more lovable, trying to take up less space, in fact, the evidence suggests that it doesn't make an iota of difference, except that maybe you're a bit more likely to kind of react. And that, so it's a kind of almost like a strategy that doesn't really have any evidence that it actually works, and which is more evidence really that it's not about your lovability, it's more to do with them and their difficulties, their issues. Yeah. My parents' behavior and volatility doesn't change with my body shape and weight. So this is why, even though I want to, so what's your urge in that situation when you're trying on clothes, you're wanting to, you feel that, I'm a different shape than I was, it doesn't feel the same. What's your urge?
To crash diet, not eat anything.
Yeah. Yep. It would be healthier for me to, so what would you advise a friend in this situation? What would be a healthy, from your healthy, wise self, what would your compassionate voice be?
That I still deserve to eat, regardless of if I've eaten a bit too much over the last week, and should still eat my 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
And crash diets don't work.
Yeah. To not be seduced by the false promises of diets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the reality, isn't it? There's all sorts of kind of magical thinking around dieting. If I diet, if I lose weight, then this will happen and that will happen, and I'll be more lovable. And it's very kind of magical thinking that almost like all our problems will be solved. Gives you a sense of control over that really difficult feeling of feeling unlovable, which is a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
So what would be healthier for you to do instead that would, from your healthy side, help you to feel more lovable, help you to kind of be in touch with that? How could you treat yourself differently from your healthy side that would be giving you the message that you're lovable?
I think maybe hanging out with my friends, they always make me feel better.
Yep.
And probably discounts this idea that I am unlovable.
Yeah. You can maybe tell them about how you really feel, tell them a bit about your insecurities. How would that be?
I think maybe with Jessica, I could.
Yeah.
It's just a bit scary being that vulnerable.
Yeah.
Worried that she won't want to hang out with me anymore, and then that would just, further deepen my schema that I'm unlovable.
And that's a really good point. And that's why it's really important, isn't it, to choose carefully and to do it a tiny bit by tiny bit, to test people out, because some people are good listeners and emotionally intelligent, and some people are not so great in that department. And so you want to test them out to see how capable they are of being emotionally available, emotionally present. In the past, you would have interpreted that as, how lovable am I? Am I lovable to you, or am I unlovable, depending on how the other person behaves? And what I guess this is really about you learning to see that, just as you were able to see that mom and dad's behavior is more about their problems than anything to do with how you're behaving or what size you are or anything like that. In the same way, other people's responsiveness, openness, emotional intelligence is going to really vary from person to person. So that's a real thing to test out. And interesting that you're already sussing out Jessica might be the person that to test out or to kind of get a sense of in that way. Yeah, so you can hang out with some of your friends, and I wonder if there are ways you can, and as you said, you can nourish yourself. So healthier for me to nourish myself, eat normally, stick to my 3 meals a day, not be seduced by the promises of dieting, the false promises of dieting. I can hang out with my friends, share some of my insecurities, because that can bring you closer if it's with somebody who is emotionally intelligent. And I wonder if there's anything else you can do to kind of really nourish yourself. Is there anything that kind of makes you feel good when you treat yourself well? I know this is kind of veering into territory that you would normally avoid, that's not something you tend to do, and you would often see it as self-indulgent. But I guess this is something where, we're talking about changing things so that actually we're talking about healthy self-nourishment, not self-indulgence here.
I guess I could go to the spa. Yeah, when I say that, I think maybe I wouldn't feel comfortable in my swimming suit because of gaining weight. That would be,
so that might be
something a challenge for me.
Yeah, that might be something for down the track and something to work on. But I wonder about starting with small nourishing things. And one thing that can be very nourishing is just spending time in nature. Just, is there something that you could do where you just start to be out in the world and start to connect with the world again, and what that might look like?
Yeah, there's a park and a kind of forest nearby my house that I used to always love to go in, especially for my lunch break, but I just kind of stopped going. I don't really know why. So maybe going and spend some time there would be good for me.
Yeah, with all 5 senses. So the important thing is when you're there, that you really nourish yourself by taking it in, not kind of almost being there but not being there, but really just letting yourself be. And that's a practice run for you. Taking up space in the world is taking up space in nature, and because that's where you belong, because we're all kind of part of nature. So that's a way to maybe start out. So really well done there. You've really done a great job. Can I just get you to read through that and see whether that resonates for you from the start, if you feel comfortable with it?
Just read it aloud or just read it to me?
Just read it out loud.
So at the moment, I'm feeling frustrated, greedy, unlovable because my clothes are tight and it feels like I've gained weight. I do know that this triggered my schema, my defectiveness, unlovable schema. This is because I have learned in the past that my parents' stress and shouting was my fault. I assumed this because I was different from my sisters and that this made me less lovable. And my dad made me feel like my energy and chattiness was an imposition on him and that I was in the way, took up too much space. His tolerance of having children around behaving as children do was very low, and he made me feel like it was my fault. Okay. Although I believe that I am a failure, unlovable, disgusting pig, and that I will never have people in my life that want to be close to me, the reality is that the tightness of my clothes isn't linked to my inherent lovability. Trying to be thin is my old way of coping and trying to be lovable and to feel less of a burden. Being a normal size and taking up space in the world is normal. Others tell me that they want me to be healthy, to take up space in their lives. When I'm less tied up in the anorexia, I am more myself, more flexible, more open, and others are more keen to spend time with me. The evidence for this healthier point of view is that my nephew wants to spend time with me. My friends Maria and Jessica suggest meeting up more when I am well. My dog and cats always want to spend time with me, no matter what. And my parents' behavior and volatility doesn't change with my body shape and weight. That is why, although I want to restrict my eating, to starve myself, it would be healthier for me to nourish myself, eat normally, to stick to my 3 meals a day, to not be seduced by the false promises of dieting. I can hang out with my friends, share some of my insecurities, tiny bit by bit, or I could go to the park and spend some time in the forest with all 5 of my senses.
Good job. And when you read through that, purely from a logical point of view, so not thinking about the kind of emotional point of view at the moment, but just purely logically, how much does that kind of make sense to you, or kind of how much do you believe it from a logical perspective?
I think, yes, logically, I can see the rationale and it makes sense, but emotionally, I'm not sure if I connect to it just yet.
Yeah. So that's perfectly fine, because we're going to work on that together, and we've got lots of ways of working on that. So at the moment, just purely, if you were to rate it on a scale of 0 to 100 from a logical point of view, where would you put your kind of belief in this without the emotional stuff kind of coming into it?
65.
65. Yep. Okay. And there might be things that we can do to kind of strengthen that even more, and kind of work on this together to strengthen that belief. But 65 is pretty good. And I wonder if this is something that we can maybe explore together. Sometimes something that can stop it from going higher is that sometimes this belief that I'm the problem, I'm the unlovable one, I'm the one that needs to change, can give you a sense of hope, a sense of control over a chaotic family environment, an environment where you feel unhappy and where everyone feels unhappy. And I wonder if as a child, that partly you believed this because of, as a child, we only see the world in very simple terms, in black and white. I'm wrong or you're wrong. And as a child, we think our parents are always right and that we're always wrong. That's just how kids see things, and that helps us feel safe seeing things that way. But I wonder as well if feeling like you're unlovable gave you a sense of hope that your parents might, if you could be different, if you could change yourself, if you could be thinner, if you could take up less space in the world, that might that it might be possible for them to be less volatile and more loving. And that's a hard thing to give up, isn't it? Does that resonate at all for you?
Yeah, I think I've never really thought about it in that way, but that definitely makes sense. Yeah, that's what was going on for me.
And that's a painful thing to let go of. And as you let go of this belief, you also start to let go of a bit of that hope. And that's a painful thing to let go of. But I would say that, 2 things that we might start to look at as to whether actually your parents, that this is not about whether or not your parents love you, they do, but it's really more about how capable are they of really showing that in a healthy way, and that's the bit of hope that maybe we might kind of work on slowly letting go of, because that's not in your control, and we're working on things that you can control. And I think the second thing is that we're working on, as I say, you developing relationships with people who are emotionally intelligent, who are able to really see you, who are healthy enough to kind of manage their behavior and show love in healthy ways. For you to choose. As an adult, you're in that position. As a child, you don't get any choice. So you have to cope with what you've got. But as an adult, you can choose people who are capable of showing love in healthy ways. And that's a big thing for you to start to get what you need without having to change who you are. Yeah, that belongs to your relationship in the past. Yeah. So well done. So if you can maybe just start to use this, and we'll maybe do a mini audio flashcard together as well, where you can just listen to it on your phone at times when you're feeling triggered, and just to kind of start to remind yourself of these things, start to remind yourself that this isn't a fact, that this is something you learned, that this is something that you learned through your experience, and that it's kind of old stuff based on on your experience as a little child. And we'll touch base again next week and see how helpful you've been, and whether we need to tweak it at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Great. Well done.
Thank you.